Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So in this video I will be playing catch up. I will be presenting to you days 12 through 15 because I really wanted to get up to speed, get up to date, and which is why this video is being uploaded a little later in the day, but I really wanted to include day 15. I was not inspired at all for day 12 and 13. I felt that the colors were very dull. There was no contrast. So I decided to add some more paint, and I did not really have any particular idea in mind when I started this page at all. Which brings me to a good timing, the perfect timing to answer one of your fellow subscribers' question. This one comes from Lauren Russo, and she asks, when you first approach a page, do you see something right away, or do you start doodling and then something comes to you? I find it so intimidating and hard to start. I'm afraid to ruin it even though I know no one will see it. It's a super good question. I get this all the time, which is why I wanted to answer it. However, the answer is not definite because it changes from day to day, depending on the mood I'm in, or depending on what I'm looking at. My preferred way of painting has always been intuitive, which means that I start with no plan and then things get built up as I go along. Because sometimes if I have an exact idea of what I want to do and things don't go out, things don't go my way, then I get a little bit upset at myself or I get discouraged. So starting off with no expectations has always been my preferred method. However, if I'm starting like these two pages with something that has already been colored, or a painting that's already been started and left to the side for a bit, I'm not always inspired. And so in this case, when I started it out, I did not mean to do a cityscape, but it will turn into it eventually. And sometimes I walk into a painting or I will turn a page and I will see something right away. So it's very difficult for me to answer that question with precision. My best answer that I could give you is just start. Just start and keep starting. The approach is always different. The feeling will always be different because art is very dependent on your mood, outside sources as well. If it's noisy around you, that may affect the way you paint. If it's calm, then you'll have a different approach. If you're tired, things will go a different way. So yeah, in essence, that's the best I can do to answer your question. Now, getting back to the painting, this is at the point where I started seeing buildings, and I'm gonna bust out my pen and completely ruin it. In my mind, I ruined it by trying to doodle the buildings, and I felt after a while that it didn't really suit the mood of the page. And this is one of those pages where I thought I was just going to scrap because I was not happy at all. And however, I always like to push the boundaries. So whenever I'm not happy, I just keep on going in the hopes that eventually I will be able to bring it back. Sometimes that works, sometimes that doesn't work. So this page was done on the 12th, and then the next day when I return to do page 13, I will modify day 12, and you'll see how I'm going to do that. But I just want to talk briefly about this pen. I know in my last video I had forgotten to link it in the description. I've now added the link to this pen. I usually order my pens through jetpens.com. And this is the Uniball Signo DX, which is 0.28 millimeter. And I may accidentally have picked up the blue-black pen. I'm not sure. To me, it looks a little bit bluish. Even when I look at the page, like, no, it's black. Okay. I think I pulled the wrong pen on my desk because I'm doing this voiceover. Then once I had done all this scribbling and I was quite dissatisfied, I decided to add a little bit of white gouache. The one thing that bothered me about these two pages is the absence of white. It's very full, and I always do better when I leave some white spaces in my paintings. And I should know that by now, but when I prepped the book, I did not pay attention to that. So which is why I have pages like these. And this is the next day. The next day, I guess the 13th of December, I had an epiphany while I was having breakfast, and I thought, oh, what if I were to use one of Patty's stencils and define the buildings, but in a subtle way? And it worked out perfectly. And then a story started to come, so I will talk about that later. But I use Mr. Clean's magic eraser sponges to remove color through a stencil on watercolor. It really works well, but you have to make sure that you squeeze the water out of the sponge really well, something I didn't do in the next two pages. And this stencil is called Skyscrapers, I believe, and again I will link it down below. It's available at istencils.com. And look at this. That totally suited the mood. You can see I'm shaking the book because I was all of a sudden very happy. Like the page turned into something a little bit more satisfying. And so the story came when I did the second batch of stenciling. If you look at the right hand side, the top buildings, they look like they're unfinished. And so the way I saw, and now I'm going to move on to the actual day, the day 13, which is the same day that I finished the 12th. Am I confusing you yet? So I decided to do the same treatment for the other page, but on that page I did not add any color to the background. I just decided to treat it as is. And so the story in my head was, because on the left hand side I have these what I consider unfinished buildings, and the scribbles could be interpreted as cranes that are actually trying to either take down the city or make it bigger. And then on the right hand side I had a different feeling. I wanted to represent calmness after construction or before. Okay, stick with me. It'll get much clearer as we as I keep on painting, but I'm gonna be adding this time, instead of adding a little bit of black and sepia, I'm adding just, I think, the straight up sepia, just to make it a little bit warmer, because the idea of the right page was to create a city that's a little bit more harmonious, less noise, and also introduced some nature into it. So that blob on the right hand side, like kind of like in the middle of the page, will turn into a tree. And the scribbles that I did with the brush, the same method I used for the left hand page, are and this is not planned at all, it's a happy accident, but when I progressed through it, I saw two figures, and actually two persons and one falcon. I'm not sure if you can pick that up, but I will include a photo at the end of this segment, and you're going to see it from up close. And I will also redefine these figures with the pen. And now I'm just adding like happy colors and that yellow ochre that I have on the left hand page, just to tie everything together. So the idea is that on the left hand side I have chaos, and then on the right hand side I have my two warriors, I now call them two warriors and a falcon, that fought for their city to be a little bit more calm, more appealing, more balanced. I have a very vivid imagination. So that's my little story about these two pages. When you use a magic eraser through a stencil, it's normal that the paper will pill because it's kind of like fragile paper, especially this one is 100% cotton. It's not a big deal. I just brush them away, and that's that. I'm not being very precious with this journal. And here's a close-up of my two warriors and the falcon. They're not very well defined, but there's one on the left-hand side who is holding a long stick. It's probably a magic wand of some sort. Very rickety, long magic wand. And then the falcon on a branch, and this other figure that is sitting on top of a rock formation looking at the more peaceful, well-balanced city. I did days 14 and 15 on the same day, which is this morning actually, and I started by adding two more darker spots. I was inspired by these colors. I really liked it. There was a good balance of white space and different shapes, and I was going to have a more of an abstract approach to these pages, but then I started making leaves, and I don't know why I started with the right page. Honestly, it just felt more comfortable, but I'm going to go from loving this page so much then to thinking that I messed up, then fixing things, which seems to be a trend with me these days. And again, which I'm very grateful for, because this is when you learn the most, is by either fixing mistakes or totally experimenting and not caring about the outcome. And for that reason, in my eyes, this little notebook will be an invaluable tool. I think more than my sketchbook, which still to this day I feel to work in every day. I think that this notebook will probably be the best tool that I have to go back to whenever I'm stuck or before starting a painting. It kind of became like a sketchbook to me, I guess. The right hand page, the way it is now, I absolutely adore. But to make it work like this, I would have had to do a very simple page on the left. And so this is my personality. I always feel like I'm not giving enough, which is really bad. I'm working on this, but obviously I'm not having great success at the moment. But if I had stopped at where I'm at right now, which would have been very fine for me because it would have looked really nice, I decided to marry those two pages and treat them as one single page. And so I wanted to have leaves joining these two pages. The reason why I'm saying that I always feel like I'm not giving enough is because at the point where I was at, I had been working literally maybe 2-3 minutes on the left page. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I felt like, no, I got to give more. I have to put in more work. That was my little conflict, my little internal conflict. But I miss the simplicity of these two pages. I mean, the end result is fine, but I wish I hadn't gone that step further. Sometimes, even if you have the time to put in 15 minutes into your daily practice, 2 or 3 minutes can be as valuable. And maybe I could have just grabbed another piece of paper and worked some more on something else and just leave these 2 pages alone. But there was a different plan for this one. This is when I decided that there was too much going on, and also I was having a hard time doing thin lines with my brush because probably I was loading it too much with paint, and I was also hurrying, which is not something that I should have done in the first place. But I really wanted to get that video done for you, so I'm not listening to my own advice here. I'm just not painting for myself anymore, which is not good. I decided to remove the dots by adding clean water over the dots and dabbing with a tissue. It doesn't remove the dots completely because there's always the stainability of a color, but they are faint enough to recess in the background, and that was just fine with me. I love the balance that I got when I added the doodling in the trees with these fine gold lines, because the leaves and the flowers are quite dark, and to counterbalance that, I felt like I needed something a little bit finer, a little bit more delicate, and in my eyes anyways, it totally works. And I love this pen so much. This is the Uniball Signo, what's it called? UM120NM Noble Metal. It's got a fine tip, and the gold color is just absolutely perfect. It's kind of like the white gold that I like so much by Kramer. So it's a good match. And we like that. I think this page looks pretty cool, and I thought I was going to be finished, but then I decided to bust out another stencil. This is by Crafters Workshop. It's number TCW351S, and I did not squeeze enough of the water in my sponge, and I was creating a mess because the water was seeping under the stencil and it was leaving imprints on the other parts, as you can see. So I don't know why I kept on going in the same manner. Do I like the dots in the leaves? Yeah, they're fun. It adds a touch of whimsy, I think, to the pages. It looks cute. It really does look cute. I like it. I had fun, and I hope that you've had fun watching the video. I want to say a huge thank you to those that are playing along. Keep posting your pictures on Instagram using the hashtag CeeCeeAdvent so that I can repost your pages in my stories. I always get a kick every day. I always check the hashtag to see who's posted and what you've done, and there's some cool stuff going on there. So check out my Instagram stories if you want to see all those that are playing along. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, my awesome patrons, for supporting my art over at Patreon. I really appreciate that, and I wish you a wonderful and creative day, and I will see you soon.